Buenas noches. Tomamos asiento. Para los que no se dieron cuenta en el chat, tal vez, ahí tenemos dispositivos para traducción simultánea, para los que ocupen tener los audífonos para la traducción simultánea. Buenas noches a todos. Mi nombre es Mario Umaña. Yo soy especialista líder en el tema de competencia del Banco Interamericano de Desarrollo en Washington y estoy muy contento de compartir con ustedes esta noche aquí esta presentación del profesor Kovacic y voy a permitir presentar al profesor Kovacic, que es un gran honor. Posiblemente muchos de ustedes han oído hablar de él, pero por si acaso les puedo confirmar que el profesor Kovacic es uno de los mayores, y la palabra mayor es con mayúscula, uno de los mayores expertos a nivel mundial en el tema de política y legislación de competencia. Y por eso creo que todos nos sentimos honrados de poder participar esta noche en su presentación. El profesor Kovacic nos hablará sobre los beneficios de la competencia y la importancia de modernizar el marco legal en el caso de la Argentina. El profesor Kovacic hizo sus estudios universitarios de bachillerato en artes en la Universidad de Princeton y se graduó en Derecho con un JD en la Universidad de Columbia. Muy temprano en su carrera fue asesor en el Comité Judicial del Senado en temas de antitrust y muy temprano también comenzó su trabajo en el Federal Trade Commission. Entre 1979 y 1983 trabajó en la FTC como lo que se llama en inglés un case handler, que es la persona que lleva casos. Y luego fue asesor legal de uno de los comisionados. Tiempo después fue el jefe del departamento legal de la FTC, lo que llaman en inglés General Counsel, entre los años 2001 y 2004. Y después, entre el año 2006 hasta el año 2011, fue nombrado por el gobierno como comisionado de la Federal Trade Commission. Y durante 2 años, o más bien entre 2008 y 2009, fue su presidente. Entonces casi que tuvo una trayectoria en todos los niveles de la FTC, tanto que en el 2011, al terminar su mandato como comisionado, el profesor Kovacic recibió el premio Miles Kirkpatrick, que es un premio que se da por la FTC por los logros del profesor en el campo de derecho antitrust. Es un honor muy grande. A nivel académico, el profesor Kovacic entre el año 86 y el año 99 fue profesor en la Universidad de George Mason en Virginia y desde 1999 ha sido profesor de la Universidad de George Washington en Washington DC, profesor en competencia global, Global Competition Law, profesor de la Escuela de Derecho y también director del Competition Law Center de la universidad. También, por si fuera poco, el profesor Kovacic es profesor visitante del King's College en Londres desde el año 2015 y además es coeditor de uno de los journals más prestigiosos, el Journal de Antitrust Enforcement de la Universidad de Oxford. Desde 2013, no sé cómo tiene tiempo, pero sirve como director no ejecutivo de la Autoridad de Competencia y Mercados del Reino Unido. Y del año 2009 al 2011 fue el presidente del Comité de Outreach de la ICN, que es la Red Internacional de Competencia, que reúne a todas las autoridades de competencia del mundo y a todos los practicantes que están afiliados a esa, es la red más prestigiosa en competencia de todo el mundo. El profesor Kovacic ha sido asesor de muchísimos países en estos temas, entre ellos destaco Armenia, Benín, Egipto, El Salvador, Georgia, Guyana, Indonesia, Kazajstán, Mongolia, Marruecos, Nepal, Panamá, Rusia, Ucrania, Vietnam, Zimbabue.
Not my fault.
No. También sirve en el Comité Internacional del Instituto de Derecho de la Competencia. Y finalmente, tal vez una de las razones por las cuales ustedes conocen al profesor Kovacic es que ha escrito muchísimo, no solo artículos en los mejores journals de la materia, muchos de ellos enfocados en el tema de la agencia, que es un tema que esta semana le estamos prestando particular interés o atención en la visita de él acá, compartiendo sus experiencias sobre la forma de organizarse, de organizar la agencia, de cómo medir los logros, cómo tener algún tipo de evaluación del trabajo de la agencia. Y también ha escrito y ha sido coautor en varios libros. Uno de los libros por el cual muchos de nosotros aprendimos las cosas básicas del derecho antitrust, que es se lo recomiendo muchísimo. Es un libro que tiene como coautores también al profesor Ernest Gellhorn y Stephen Hawkins. Es el libro que se llama Antitrust Law and Economics in a Nutshell. Y es un libro fabuloso porque realmente detalla no solo la historia del antitrust en Estados Unidos, la jurisprudencia principal, la evolución de la regla per se y la regla de la razón, y uno se lo lee en poco tiempo y queda realmente al día y muy bien enterado de los principios del derecho antitrust. Pero en todo caso, tenemos hoy la dicha de tener al profesor Kovacic, una personalidad mundial, y viene a compartir con nosotros esto. La idea es que él presente por unos 45 minutos y después vamos a abrir a las preguntas que ustedes tengan a bien hacerle al profesor Kovacic. Con ustedes.
Muchas gracias, Mario. I'm enormously grateful to you to share the podium with you here, and so much of what I have to say about Latin America, I know I've learned from you. So if you hear an echo, it is the result of your teaching over time. But in academia, as you know, there are two ways to get ideas. One is to come up with your own, which is very hard. The other is to take them from someone else. So I am grateful that you have been so generous in sharing your knowledge with me about the region and about competition law. As Mario said, I'd like to talk this evening about the prospects for a renaissance in competition law and policy in Argentina, and for the possibilities of expanding the role that competition plays as a mechanism for improving economic performance. And in doing this, I want to use a metaphor from Formula One racing about what the elements of success are. And I owe, in many ways, the metaphor to William Peña, who I saw yesterday, and we discussed some of the ways in which you could think about competition law as being a factor of different contributions. And in Formula One racing, I think there are four main contributors. There's the role of the owner, there's the role of the driver, the role of the team that supports the car, and then the car itself. And I want to talk about all four, what each can contribute in this instance. And in doing it, I am very much influenced by a comparative perspective. In my field, in academia, indeed we are in a university setting. When I grade papers, I grade on a curve. When you evaluate students, it is compared to what? So in talking about Argentina's experience, I want to use a comparative point of view. I think using an absolute scale is valid. That is, how are you doing measured against the best that one could imagine? But also to think about how Argentina is doing compared to other jurisdictions. And in particular, to keep in mind what I think are the three leading jurisdictions, in Latin America today in competition law. Brazil, Chile, and Mexico. How can Argentina join that group? So that when people talk about the best in Latin America, they will talk inevitably about Argentina in that cohort as well. And indeed to think about other relatively new members of the competition law community and to think about how Argentina matches with their experience. What's remarkable in my field, in our shared field, is how many jurisdictions have created laws in the past roughly 30 years. If you start in 1989 and come forward, there have been 100 new systems created in that time. 100. From the work I've done with colleagues, this has happened in no other field of law globally. That is, in no other area have so many countries adopted a new system in such a short period of time. 130 years, quite astonishing. I have shared with some of you the experience I had when I was in university. I finished my law school studies in 1978. That is only 40 years ago. When I finished, I talked to my instructor and he said, "What do you want to do with your degree in law?" I said, "I would like to practice in the field of international competition law." He listened and he shook his head with obvious sadness. He said, "I could never recommend that you go into a field that will never be important." And in 1978, that was not crazy advice, because the total number of countries in 1978 that had competition laws, depending on how you count them, 2 hands and 1 foot, maybe 15. And if you asked how many of those had laws that you really had to pay attention to, 1 hand at the most. Who knew? Quite a remarkable revolution. But it gives us a chance that we never had before to draw informative comparisons and to ask, what does it take to be effective? What are the elements of an effective system? So other jurisdictions that have done well in that group of 100, jurisdictions like South Africa, Singapore, Lithuania, Latvia, how did they become successful? Because all of them started in circumstances that were extremely difficult and did not allow one to confidently predict in 30 years, by 2017, they will be successful. I'm also drawing on recent work that I've done with one of our doctoral students at George Washington, someone many of you know, Marianela Lopez-Galdos. She is, I think, the best comparative scholar of her generation. At the age of 30, she has already mastered law in the European Union, United States, and in so many other countries. She is a native of Spain, but is a very keen student of work in Latin America. We have worked together with other researchers on a project to compare competition authorities according to key institutional characteristics. And what we are trying to ask for ourselves is there any connection between how a system develops and the institutional characteristics? So in part, I'll be drawing on the work that we have been doing together in trying to look at this large collection of institutions. So I want to start with some general observations about what we see in the development of competition law. I want then to look at each of these 4 elements: owner, driver, team, car. And in doing this, I'm giving you my views, not the views of the Competition and Markets Authority in the UK, but much of what I'm going to say is informed by my experience in looking at a system that is an old system but is very new again, and is starting on the path of building a new competition regime in the United Kingdom. we have a generous amount of time from our host tonight. I'll talk for about 40 or 45 minutes. Then you have questions, comments, plenty of time to discuss those and to talk about any specific points that you'd like to raise or others that I might elaborate on. A general comment in what we see about the development of these competition law systems, the entire body of 130 and the newest group of 100 since the late 80s. One major impression that comes from this is that for all of them, the development of an effective system was a long, slow growth. Nobody got there right away. Nobody was truly successful in the first years. And in many cases, it was only after 20, 25, 30 years that they became truly effective, in that they had broad political support, that there was general acceptance for what they did, that they accumulated the powers they needed to succeed, and as a result, became respected institutions. It's a way of saying that if you are not interested in running a marathon, this is not your field. If you are fond of the 100-meter dash, that's taking place in another room. It is not this field. That to compare one's own experience, I think, requires an element of realism. That is, if you look at all of these other systems, it took many years to become proficient in what they do, and it requires ambition to press ahead to try to accelerate the process. But without the realism of looking at other systems, it is easy to become discouraged and to say, it can't happen. We're not making progress fast enough. Dramatic examples. In the United States, it took arguably 50 years, 50, half century, to gain general social acceptance for the idea that competition matters, that it's important and should be at the heart of economic regulation. That's 50 years in a country in which the initial conditions were very favorable. It was a market system, always had been. Very good courts, absolutely first-rate courts, certainly at the national level, where the suspicion of corruption or incompetence was decidedly low because the system functioned well. A set of institutions that became generally acceptable in their ability to execute legal commands. So if it takes 50 years there, what does one expect in other settings? Same with the European Union. The first 20 years were very slow experimentation. The European Union, you can argue, did not become a real powerhouse until 1989 with the merger regulation. So late 50s to 1989, it was not a Premier League franchise. It only became a Premier League franchise after many decades of experience, and then it ascends over time. I picked two of the oldest, two of the most influential, because their experience is very informative in asking what we can expect. To think of it another way, to go back to the 100-meter dash. If no one has run the 100 meters in 8 seconds, ever, that tells us a lot about what you can expect in the 100-meter dash. And improvements only come about in small fractions, not giant leaps. Nobody brings the record down by 1 second, a tenth of a second. Sometimes there are remarkable improvements. In the 1968 Olympics, Bob Beamon increased the world record in the long jump by 2 feet. That doesn't happen very often. That is most unusual. So in our field, I think a realistic assessment of how an institution develops and how a system progresses is to expect that it will take time, it will require patience and continued effort in order for it to succeed. So the attitude, I think, again, is one, realism, this takes time and effort over a long term. Ambition, to try to accelerate the process of improvement. And the characteristic, as I mentioned with our colleagues this morning, when you look at all the systems that succeeded, what did they do? They have an initial period where they are experimenting. They're trying different things. They're trying to see what works, in particular to adapt different models to their own circumstances. There are some broad principles that have universal application, but everyone discovers that you can't just take things off the rack and put them on. Nobody buys clothes that way. You don't go to buy an expensive suit and just say, I'll take that one. The store owner will say, would you like to try the sleeves? Can I measure the trousers, the coat? Nobody says, I don't care. I'm just going to put the suit on. I don't care how it fits. Everybody does tailoring. It takes time to get a fit and an approach that works. To the elements, let me start with the owner. Who's the owner in this picture? It's the head of state. Does the head of state literally own the country? No. The head of state represents all of the citizens who own the country. That's the owner. If the owner doesn't support your team, you're going to fail. If at the top of the government, the highest level of government, you do not have political support, that is the indispensable ingredient of success. If you take that away, you have a system that at its very best can merely survive. It will not prosper. No matter how good the driver is, no matter how good the team, no matter how good the car. And there are many instances in which agencies have begun with great political support and it disappeared. Two of them from Latin America, Venezuela. There was a wonderful event in the mid-1990s, in 1996 in Lima. It was the 5th anniversary of Indecopi. And what you had assembled were the heads of all of the Latin agencies, including President Bogo from this agency in its early years. President Bogo was there. Beatriz Boza, the president of Indecopi, the first. Ana Julia Hattar, who was the first president of Pro Competencia. And when you looked at that group, you would have said, these are the 3 stars. These are the agencies that are on the way up, and they were. The 4th that was also on the way up was Brazil. Gisner Oliveira was the head of CAGE, the reconstituted competition authority. When you looked in that room, you would have said, destined for success, Peru and Venezuela. What happened? As you know, President Fujimori literally left the country. He not only lost his job, he left his country. He had to go. When he went, what happened in Indecopi was that Beatriz Boza soon went also. And what had she done to build up Indecopi? She had recruited one of the best teams you will ever see. Beatriz received her first degree from Católica in Lima, and then her second degree from Yale University in New Haven. That's where she got her LLM. She then went to a fancy law firm in New York City, Sherman & Sterling. She was a senior associate, and the phone rings, and it is the president of Peru saying, come home. I have a job for you. We've created this new instrument called Indecopi. I want you to run it. And she did. But to build her team and the heads of chambers, she got people like her. And you had people like Alfredo Boulard, whose book many of you know. Alfredo, LLM, Yale, please come join me. Alejandro Pena, University of Chicago, please come join me. Armando Caceres, University of California, Berkeley, PhD, you're going to be the chief economist. She went and got stars who would have been great anywhere, and they came and joined her. As soon as she left, they left too. So in the period of about a month, you had what amounted to the decapitation of the agency because all of this truly superior talent left the agency at the same time. If you did that with the Federal Trade Commission or the Department of Justice or DG Comp, you would have the same effect. If you went through the organization chart and took out the first 3 lines, all gone, it would be debilitating. It would take a long time to recover. For a new agency, it's almost fatal. They all left. In Venezuela, it took a bit longer. Ana Julia, Ignacio de Leon, you had high-quality leadership, but then the political circumstances changed. Hugo Chavez becomes the head of state. He takes the country in an entirely different direction. So, in a short period of time, 2 agencies that seem destined for success are turned upside down by dramatic political change that sets the agencies on a different path. There are many other examples around the world today where that has happened, a change in the regime. So, as a starting point, if the owner doesn't like you, and if the owners of the franchise don't support you with a budget, with support for needed improvements in the law, with general support in the form of appointments that bring top leadership into the authority that will do the job well, if this is lacking, I think there's very little that you can accomplish. The most you can do is wait until the weather changes and then try again. In Argentina, the weather changed. What's crucial is that there is a moment now, a time now, where it is possible to build an expanded program. An agency that survived for many years now can do more than survive, it can prosper. Because what has the owner done? The owner has said, this is important to me, and I want to support it. I suppose the real challenge is, how does the owner make this durable? So that when there is a new owner, that the new owner will say, I agree that this is an important element of policy. Part of it, I think, is to try to demonstrate and reinforce how competition is good for the economy. There are many examples, I think, of how this is happening in Latin America. In Mexico, President Palacios is able to look at case after case where the Mexican authority has made a difference. In the pharmaceutical sector, they had dramatic success in bringing down the prices of pharmaceutical products that the government purchases for its medical insurance program. And it was directly the result of a competition law case that brought about that change. And a strong case that challenged behavior that would be challenged, I think, in most jurisdictions around the world. So if someone asks, Hannah Palacios can say, here's example number 1, and it's not the only one. Although they did not directly change the telecom regime in Mexico, through years of effort, they brought about regulatory change and other market adjustments that have improved the performance of this sector. Indeed, part of the strategy that was followed in Mexico was to look at sectors that would make a difference, that people knew about, that had multiplier effects. Transport, especially in their lines, energy, food, banking, telecom, and professional services, where if you have a small positive impact, it will send ripples throughout the economy. And Mexico, I think, is a good example of how that can be done. In Brazil, there is a basic change in the public procurement system now based on what CAGE has done in Brazil. The car wash inquiry has anti-corruption features, but it is also fundamentally a public procurement case. And what Brazil has done, what CAGE has done, and this is a most ambitious case, It is politically extremely sensitive for reasons that you understand. But arguably what CAGE has done is to catalyze a change not only in the way that Brazil purchases goods and services for the state and for public programs, but a basic change in public administration too. This is a source of great upheaval in the country, but if one asks, what can competition law deliver? These are the kinds of things that it can bring about in a country. And these examples are not the only examples one could point to. So is it worth having? I think one of the challenges for political leadership is to make the argument and the case that whenever the regime changes, this is a program that should be seen as a durable program. This should be seen as a perennial. This is a plant you don't want to pull out of the ecology because it is delivering benefits that are broadly shared. But to look ahead and ask, can the Renaissance develop and continue? A necessary starting point in Argentina is that the owner supports the program. And the owner has given enthusiastic support. Second element, driver. You can take an excellent driver and put the excellent driver in a very average car, and in Formula One, starts at the back, but when the race is over, up towards the top. Gets points, stays in the running for the world championship, because the driver is really good. If you take the best car in the world and put a bad driver into the car, what will the driver do? The driver will put the car into the wall, and that will be the end of the race. Indeed, there is a serious problem giving a very elegant, fast car to a bad driver, because there is a good chance they will not know what to do, and they will wreck the car. And getting another car will be difficult as a result. A reason to be optimistic in Argentina, as I've shared with many of you, is that I think the drivers are really good. I think the leadership team is expert in a variety of ways. One, it is experienced. As I've mentioned to many of you, this is not a job for children. Now, sometimes you can take very young people. An example that contradicts what I've just said is Brazil. In the time when Brazil was ascending, when it was Danny Goldberg, when it was Mariam Tavares, when it was Barbara Rosenberg, they were frighteningly young. When I met Danny Goldberg, and I knew who Danny was, but I didn't know he was barely 30 years old, I thought, Danny, do your parents know you're not in school today? What are you doing here? How did this happen? Well, Danny, it turns out, was a good bet. It was a gamble. It was risky. But it paid off. Danny had good judgment. In particular, what Danny had was the mark of a good leader. Danny said, I might not have the experience, but I will surround myself with people who do. And I will listen to them. I will recognize what my strengths are. I will recognize my weaknesses. And I will surround myself with a team that has the experience and the broader knowledge, and I will listen to them. Many leaders of agencies fail on both points. Some do not want to hire people who are really smart because they are seen as a threat. So they deliberately seek to hire surrounding officials who are not as good. That's a very bad approach to leadership. And if they bring them in, they won't listen to them. In many cases, because they're afraid, if I listen to my colleague, it will seem as though I'm not able to do the job. So I will march ahead. And even though a colleague is saying, the bridge that you're traveling on, that bridge collapsed. If you drive on that bridge, you will go into the abyss. It's gone. No, I'm going on that bridge. I decided we're traveling on that bridge. We're going on that bridge. And all you can say is, let me know when you hit the bottom, because that's where you're going. But Danny said, no, I'm going to hire people who complement my abilities, who support me, and I will listen to them. And he did. So did Mariana, so did Barbara. Very young, but very wise beyond their years to listen. The ideal mix are people who have experience. I think it is valuable to have been knocked around, to have been beaten up a few times so that you know what the match is like. If you have only studied the theory of football, you know that the rule of football is you play the ball, not the man. But if you've only studied the theory of a football and you play your first football match, you realize that it can be a rough game. Especially when you get in the box, where it is every person for himself. Where you see limbs falling off around you, and the entire job is to stay in the box and keep playing. It's a rough sport. It is not easy to play. If you haven't done that, you don't know what it's like. It's good to have been through that before, to know how rough the game can be, to know how rough it is in the political arena, to develop a thick skin when a journalist calls you an idiot and draws your picture depicting you as a clown or a strange creature of the zoo, and to say, at least they spelled my name right. Good job. And if you have great self-confidence, to write to the cartoonist and say, can I have a copy of that? Would you mind? I would like to put that on my wall. That's a great drawing. To have the experience, to have the expertise, so that you know what you're talking about. I'll give you an example from an older agency. Germany right now has a truly superior head of their agency, the Bundeskartellamt. First rate, he's excellent, Andreas Mundt. Truly superior. His predecessor was a brilliant macroeconomist. Macroeconomist. Money supply. Banking. Large, broad indicators of economic performance. Not a microeconomist. Now, that's all right if you will learn, but he never felt confident in this. So this is what he would do when he gave a speech. He would give a speech. Mr. Chair, Mr. President, do you mind taking some questions? Questions. Okay. Question number 1. For abusive dominance, do you think the test in predatory pricing should be pricing below average variable cost or above average variable cost? And should there be a requirement of recoupment? What did the president do? He said, I refer you to Herr Lange here, who is my assistant. He will answer your question. Could you give the microphone to Herr Lange to answer that question? For the first few months, you thought, okay, everybody's learning, becoming more comfortable. But after 3 years, it was still, Herr Lange will answer the question. Imagine that you are a case handler with the Bundeskartellamt. You are sitting with your friends in the audience, and the head of your agency cannot answer a technical question about what you do. That is not a happy experience, because your friends look at you and they smirk, and even if they're not looking at you, they're smirking inside. And they're saying, the person in charge doesn't know the subject matter. He can read a text, but he can't engage in back and forth. There's no shame in learning on the job. All of us have done that. But if you're not learning, it's a bad sign. So it is a great benefit to have the experience and the expertise, and what I'll simply say is an idea of what has to be done to make improvements. A view of going ahead, not simply satisfaction with the title, with the nice office, with the invitations, and they're good invitations to good places. But a vision of how to proceed, and to realize that every day you're in the office is one less day you have to do this. That every day is a precious day. The guy I worked for when I headed legal services, he had a list. He had about 30 items on the list, but he had 5 that he really cared about. And we had a meeting every Monday morning with the senior leadership team, head of legal services, heads of unit, in his office. And he'd say, okay, here's the list of 5. What did you do this past week to move ahead on the 5? You. And it was not an answer to say, still working on it, or no progress. What are you doing to move ahead on the list? And when one was accomplished, number 6 became number 5. The list just moved up. But there was no doubt each and every week what it was expected that you would do and where we were going. There was no doubt about that. From the top of the organization down to the most humble case handler. All the way through the organization, that was clear. My sense is that leadership exists right now. And a good sign is that the leadership is doing things that can be done right now with the institution without regard to changes. There were many areas when I was at the FTC, when I was junior and more senior, where there were things we wanted the Congress to change. There were disabilities in the law that really held us back. And we wanted them to be changed, but we understood that waiting for them to be changed was a formula to be passive. To say, when is the law coming? Well, the law might be coming like Mr. Godot. We're waiting for Mr. Godot. He's coming. He's supposed to come. He said he'd be here. Where is he? You know, in the play, he never shows up. So the question is, what are you doing right now with what you have? And I see that happening. I see it happening with respect to saying, what programs will we pursue? How do we improve our process internally to increase speed, tempo, delivery, clarity, guidance? How do we do all of these things in order that we can improve performance right now? Not waiting for Mr. Godot, but things we can control right now that increase confidence in our capacity, our competence, and our vision. And oh yes, to share what we're doing with the outside world. This is what we're trying to do. We consult when we revise guidelines. We ask for the views of outsiders. What we're saying is our main objective is to get it right and to make improvements. And we welcome guidance about how to do that. We are not afraid that if we ask, we will be criticized. And that is often a danger for a competition agency, old and new, that you retreat into a protective shell and you say, I'm not going to ask, I'm not going to consult because I'm not going to want to hear what comes my way. Now, when I was in the leadership team at the FTC, I did not enjoy criticism. I did not enjoy having people from the bar, from the business societies, from academics, sitting at a workshop and telling me 10 things that were going wrong, 5 things that were catastrophes, and then saying, well, there are 1 or 2 things that are okay. Giving me a report card with 2 C's, a bunch of D pluses, and several F's. But I knew that for several reasons, this was a good exercise. One is, I learned something from them. These were the users. Did I believe everything they told me? No. Were their views always accurate in assessing what we were doing? No. Did they have sometimes a narrow point of view? Oh, yes. But there were many instances in which I knew I was learning something valuable, and that was worth hearing. But let's suppose I learned nothing at all. Symbolically, it was very healthy, because it was a way of saying, we're paying attention. And if you have a better way of doing it, tell us. Even if I were to sit at the meeting taking notes, saying, yes, good point, please go on. Pick up dry cleaning. Yes, yes, excellent idea. Yes, yes. Put petrol in the car. Call the caterer. Yes, yes, oh, excellent point, yeah. And as your listening face, you develop a good listening face, especially if you go to legislative hearings. The correct approach at the legislative hearing is to almost look as though you're praying. The member of the legislative committee says, isn't the earth flat? Instead of going, oh God, no. It's a very interesting point, Senator. Now, there is a lot of evidence that suggests that it's round. But this is a fresh, innovative approach. And you can be sure that we'll think about that back in the office, that it's flat. And I am grateful for sharing your ideas with me. And if you say that without sarcasm, if you just put your hands together like you are praying, and you are praying, and you say, save us God. Please. We get the message. We will make our lives better. But you hold your hands together, and you look, and you nod. When you nod at them, they think you're agreeing with them. It's not. And you say, very interesting. They interpret interesting to mean thoughtful, brilliant. You think it's interesting because you cannot imagine that an official with great power would say such a thing. Interesting is a wonderful word in English, so ambiguous. That's very interesting. No faces? But even if you are just sitting there and making a list of things you have to do for the weekend, symbolically, it is very helpful to pay attention to the outside. And if you do listen, and you have a tough skin and say, okay, I'm an idiot, I'm an imbecile, I'm a moron, yes, we'll admit to all of that. Tell me what I need to know to get better. There are times when you will hear something that is useful. I found that the place that I liked to go to give speeches the most was a hostile audience. When I was chair of the agency, I wanted to go to a hostile audience. I didn't want to go talk to friends. I knew what my friends would say. I wanted to go to a hostile audience. And I wanted to stand there and hear their questions. And have the business association or the bar tell me what a mistake I was making. I don't think I ever changed their minds, but I remember one occasion where I listened, I answered questions, the program was over, and I was about to leave. This was a program involving a group of wine merchants that were opposing our effort to allow people to buy wine over the internet across state borders. And he came up and said, I still think you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. But I respect you for being here. And instead of issuing proclamations from your office, to be right here in front of us at this meeting without your entourage, standing here at the microphone answering questions. I respect that. And that had the useful function of saying we are accountable for what we do. And again, if the minute comes when you're not ready to defend your ideas, it probably shows that you need new ideas, because the ones you have aren't good enough. So, what I see happening is a leadership team that knows all of this. Importance of setting a plan, defining it for external audiences and for the internal team, to improve process, to improve the speed at which things are done, to improve clarity. All of these are benefits. And oh yes, I think what the drivers know is that there are other drivers in the region. In this field, nothing is more important than learning. There is no shame in making a mistake, to doing something that fails. The shame is in making the same mistake again and again and again. Or making a mistake that someone you have observed whom you've seen made the mistake, but then doing it yourself. That is, watching someone drive off the cliff, but following them, thinking maybe my car will fly, but it won't. It will fall 16 feet per second until it hits the bottom. That's the shame. And I think one of the great possibilities for improvement is shared effort. Sharing with whom? With the other agencies that are doing a good job. Who would I be talking to about implementing a new system of pre-merger notification when that day comes? I would be talking to my colleagues in Brazil as much as I could and asking them, how did you do it? What did it take to put in place? I was a junior case handler at the FTC when the FTC's pre-merger notification system became live. It began in 1978. I arrived there in 1979. What did we see? Nobody knew what was coming at us. Nobody. Nobody understood the administrative burden. Nobody understood how hard this was going to be. Our prediction about the number of mergers that would be submitted in the first 12 months, that maybe we will get the 100 most important deals. 100. 12 months, 100. Actual number in the first 12 months, almost 1,000. What we thought would happen in a full year happened in 1 month. Almost. It was overwhelming. We had never developed the internal process for deciding who would look at the information. The stress test for this came in a merger of 2 petroleum companies, where we asked for information in going to second phase. I remember being seconded to this team from the group I was working with because I knew something about the petroleum sector. I was in the office of the petroleum team when a delivery person came up to the office and said, "We are here from Mobil." The other guy said, "We are here from Marathon. Where do you want your documents?" And the head of the office was in the front and said, "Just bring them here, right in the front office. Just bring them here, put them here." The delivery person said, "No, you come with me." Why? Follow me. We went down the elevator, out to the front of the building, around the corner, and there was the biggest truck I had ever seen. He said, "I have 350 cartons of documents that you asked for. And the Marathon guy has another truck right behind mine. He has 150. So where would you like your 500 boxes?" They were piled up in the corridors. They were stacked on furniture. And we only had, because this was a cash tender offer, 20 days to look at these records and decide whether to challenge. Nobody was ready for this. It was chaotic. It was a madhouse. Now, this was an extreme case, but there was the theory of what was going to happen, and here was the first real test. And it was a nightmare. We got better at this over time. But I'm going to suggest to you that no system that has begun pre-merger notification, and I'm a fan, I think it's worthwhile, but no one who has begun it really understands what they're in for. I saw this in China, where I met with the Chinese team that was going to implement the Chinese pre-merger notification system. And I met with them, and again, I had the same reaction. I said, "Can I see your whole team?" They said, "You're looking at them." How many were in the team? 10. Said, "These are our professionals, 5 economists, 5 lawyers, and we have 10 support staff, so we have a group of 20 altogether." 20. "Do you know what's coming your way?" They said, "Yes, we expect a small number of important mergers to be notified." I said, no, it'll be more than you think, by a lot. In the first year, they had 187, and they had never done one. It's like standing underneath a waterfall with a teacup. You get wet and you nearly drowned. And they said, "What do you think of this?" I said, "Well, As you know, the relationship at times between the United States and China, a little bit strained. It was then. So I'm from the United States. Are you going to believe me or not? Are you going to trust me? Are you going to say, why is he here? He's with a government agency. I said, forget the label. Let me tell you the story of when I began, when I saw this. I have seen this movie. I know how it goes. And you're going to be running for your lives. I saw the head of the office after he retired last year, and he said, remember that conversation? You were right. We started with 20, we needed 100. But even with 20, you don't know what you're doing. And what do you do when you don't know what you're doing? You go very cautiously. First time you drive a car in a big city, well, I've looked at a map, I've looked at a guidebook. The only time you know about what it's like to drive is when you drive the car. That's when you find out what the city is like. Oh, that street's closed. Oh, that's one way. Oh, that's a circle. Oh, I can't make a right turn here. There are people who've gone to Paris and gone to the circle around the Arc de Triomphe. There are people who've driven there until they ran out of petrol because they could never get out of the inner ring. And the cars just kept coming and coming and coming. People have gone there to die in their cars because there's no way out. The only way you know what's going to happen is after you've driven the car for a while. So, how do you improve on this? You talk to other people who've driven the car. And in this region, it's Brazil. Chile has just decided to do this as well. So a conversation, how are you doing this? How many people? Doing what? How do you set up the flow of information so that you do a timely review of the information and then move the decision to the people who have to take the decision to act or not, to settle or sue, and to do that. And there is a wealth of knowledge in that big country just north. They've been through this. They have a lot of knowledge, generally in the field of competition law, a way to accelerate the learning curve. This is the engineering concept, that you get better as you do things more often, is that you work with people who've been there before. And I think the management team knows that because what is happening? There's a broad basis of cooperation being developed. And by the way, the base of experience in Latin America is really exceptional. I mean, both of us have seen officials who are really good. I would work for Hanna Palacios in Mexico any day. I would work for Felipe Irizabal in Chile any day. I would work for this commission's leadership any day because they know what they're doing and they're really good at it. But when you have this large body of highly capable officials in the region, it's a precious resource. And I think one thing these drivers know is that they are a very informative source of insight for how to develop a program. In short, there is so much that can be accomplished in the region through collective action rather than individual initiative. And I'd say more strongly, to achieve real progress and success, there's an imperative to use the cooperation approach. Not just because it pools together different experiences, but also because the people doing the work are very good at what they've done. One of my co-authors, one of my colleagues is both a lawyer and a physician. He teaches me that part of the real breakthrough in medicine was sharing information. That at one time you had hospitals with a cardiology department. They did heart surgery. What they learned was the way to improve is not to work in isolation. You want to talk to the cardiology department in other hospitals. So what happens now is that for diagnosis, for operating theater technique, and for post-operative care, you have the pool of experience across thousands of hospitals, not just one hospital. And my colleague, David Hyman, says that has brought about a dramatic improvement in the quality of healthcare because you pool this experience. That can be done in our field. And this is a great region in the world to do it because there is so much knowledge. And if you go beyond to look at other really good systems, South Africa, Singapore, to take two, Lithuania. Lithuania started in one of the hardest positions, to be a former Soviet republic with decades of central planning, no markets, a repressive totalitarian political regime, no history of civil servants exercising discretion, saying, I'm not going to do anything until someone tells me to do it. Because if they tell me to do it, and it's documented, I can't be punished for doing what they told me to do. What's developed today is an absolutely first-rate institution that has been built slowly, step by step, over time. These are all agencies worth talking to because they've been through the process. They have a lot to teach. So, owner, driver, team. A Formula One team succeeds, and I owe this to Julian. I give him an acknowledgement as an academic. It pains me to do it. Instead of claiming credit myself, this goes against the culture of academia, but Julian's idea. It's the team. It's the team in the pit. The team that replaces the tires. The team that calculates very carefully exactly how much petrol you need to finish the race. Do I have to stop and get more, or can I finish? And if I go ahead and I finish, will I be able to finish at speed and be successful? It's the team. It's not just a driver with a bad team loses 2, 3, 4 seconds, 5 seconds. That's the difference between first place and 10th place. 5 seconds when you're going approximately 300 kilometers an hour on a slow day. 5 seconds is the difference between first and 10th. The team in the pit does that for you. That's also an area where you look at very promising developments here. The recruiting. The going and bringing in bright young people. Bright young people with a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of capacity, who will be the foundation for building the program over time. And you join them up with the very good civil servants who've been here for a while. You take the rookies and the experienced players, and you have a good combination for growth over time. And not just bringing them in, but to build their capability in a gradual process. This is no surprise to you, whether you are at a law firm, a public agency, a trade association, a business. In so many ways, the most important asset you have is the human beings. And your success depends on the human beings. It defines what you can do. I lived in Manhattan when I was going to law school, and I lived in a house where the owner of the house invited those of us who lived in the house to come to dinners that she would for her friends. She had many friends in the performing arts. One evening, the friend who came to dinner was the newly appointed head of the Department of Music at the Metropolitan Opera in New York. And he was asked at dinner by one of the guests, how do you decide what to perform every year? He said, different factors. There are some favorites that our audience wants to hear every other year or so. On the playlist, this is what they want to hear. So, if you're Celine Dion and you perform at a concert, maybe she performs at a conference also. But if she performs at a concert and she does not sing that song, and you know what it is, it may haunt you in your dreams, but if she does not sing that song, my heart will go on. If she doesn't sing that, there will be a riot. People will throw furniture, they will set things on fire. She must sing that song. So, he said, our audience has some favorites, and they want to see them. They want to see Rigoletto every couple of years. They better see that. There are things they want to see. So that's one factor. Another factor is, maybe more important, is who we can get to perform the parts. He said, there are some operas for which there are several hundred performers globally who can do the part just right. Several hundred. And if you can't get your first choice, your 10th choice will be good enough. Your 20th choice will be good enough. He said there are other operas for which God created maybe 4 or 5 sets of vocal cords in the whole world that can really hit that note. In this aria, to get way up and stay there for a few seconds so that the people in the audience will look at each other and say, that's right, that's it. She's got it. That's just right. They don't make lots of noise. They applaud politely. When they're not happy, it's just silent. It is a silence that screams at you. But they know, he said, our audience knows. And if you can't get one of those 4 or 5 people, you do not perform that composition because it will not be just right. He finished by saying, it all depends on who's playing. Well, for us, what should a competition agency do? It depends on who's playing. How many good teams can you put together? How deep is the entire roster? How much skill, how much experience, how much ability? There's maybe no more important role for top leadership than the recruiting. I liked that part of my job when I was at the FTC. I liked the recruiting. I liked looking for the talent because I knew that long after I was gone, many of them would be there. And that would be my lasting contribution to my agency, is that those people would be older, wiser, and more successful at what they did. I think the leadership group regards building the team as an indispensable priority. Not just bringing them in, but building their capability so that they're able to play the tough compositions. So that when they do a case, the knowledgeable figures in the field will look at each other and say, that's right. Even if we don't agree with everything they've done, we will marvel at their technical skill and their knowledge and their judgment. And we'll say, that is a sign of a good agency. My experience was the business community and the bar did not expect you to do what they wanted every time. Many times they're not sure what they want themselves. They're not certain about that. They will give you conflicting advice about what they want because their membership isn't sure about what they want. But what they do want is clarity, predictability, and skill. If you have an opponent in the law, you wish for the opponent to be very good, really smart, because they will get down to business right away. You will have a common language. You will not be talking about basics. You'll be talking about what's important. It is refreshing to talk to someone who understands what they're talking about and knows the larger context. The chair of the Federal Trade Commission, when I was head of legal services, had been an academic. He had been in a government agency 4 times before, and he had been, as an academic, a consultant on hundreds of mergers. And when people would come into his office to make a presentation from the parties, they would begin and they would say, we want to raise 4 points, 1, 2, 3, and 4. The chairman, I would sit in the meetings to watch, would say, sorry to interrupt, but you and I know that points 1 and 4 are pretty weak. They're really not very good. I know it and you know it. 2 and 3 are really interesting. Let's talk about 2 and 3. You could see the lawyer thinking, oh, thank God, because I know 1 and 4 aren't very good. The client here really is in love with 1 and 4, but I know 1 and 4 aren't that good. Let's talk about 2 and 3. Those meetings got down to business right away, and you knew you were talking about something with a responsible adult who understood that was going on. It's always good to deal with a better team. And on the outside, what will they talk about at the Bar Association meetings? What will they say? Will they say, that agency always gets it right? No. They won't. But when they complain about what they don't like, they will not say, and they're not good at what they do. What they will say is, I didn't agree with that, but they were good. They really understood the issues. They were really capable. They were clear, they were informative, they were honest, and they were thoughtful. They did their homework. They disagreed with me at the point of judgment, but I don't expect all the human beings to agree with me. Where they departed, they told me why. It was clear, understandable, and it was competent. I respect them. I wish they had agreed with me, but I still respect them. Building that kind of team is a gradual, slow growth. That doesn't happen in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. You build that over a long period of time. When I was a junior case handler at the Federal Trade Commission in the 1970s and early 1980s, the quality of the human talent was very uneven. You had a few very senior people who were superior. You had a number of very junior people who were smart and enthusiastic, but no experience. And in between, you had the Sahara Desert. That's where good ideas went to die. And the change in the Federal Trade Commission from 1983 when I left, when I came back in 2001, was that the desert had been reclaimed. There's still some who, if I'd had the chance, I would have traded them out for somebody new. We had 1,200 people. If I could have taken the last 50 and exchanged them for 50 new ones whom I could bring in, it would have helped. I would have liked to have done that. But the big change was that the desert was gone. There was a little bit of sand, but not the desert. And it meant that in a period from 1983 to 2001, a little over 15 years, upgrade, 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 upgrade. Better management, better team top to bottom, and that was a slow, deliberate growth. It meant that when I arrived, I was the beneficiary of a great team that had been built. I was the head of legal services. I was nervous about that because I had only been an academic. I was in a law firm for a while, but the only person I had ever managed was me. And I hadn't done a very good job of it. So now, I had 60 people who worked for me, but I had 3 great senior deputies who did all of the managing that had to be done. And I was smart enough to listen to them. I would decide, but I listened to them. And then when I looked at the people, a really good team of people, some of them had been there when I was there the first time, but most of these people had been brought in over a period of 17 years. That was the team. And every night when I went home, I said, thanks. Thanks for giving me this team. And I realized that it was my job to make sure that when I left, the team was no weaker, but was getting better. That when people left, I went and recruited and made sure that we got better over time. I think the driver understands here that the team is indispensable. And that the durable, successful program is only going to be built on building that team as well. Let me finish with some thoughts about the car. That's the last thing, the car. The car is important. Give me a great driver and a great car and a great team and a great owner, and I win championships. I win again and again and again. It's monotonous. I'm very successful. The car periodically requires improvements. And you go from an acceptable car to a better car over time. How to make the car better? I think a number of things in the... Notice that lots of the good things that can happen are happening without getting the new car. They're happening already, and the owner and the driver and the team understand that. They're getting better right now. But what would a new car look like? What features would be built in? I think they would be the features that are standard equipment with good agencies around the world. That is, if you go to those agencies and you look at, if you could buy the car and you look at what they have, here's what's standard equipment. It comes with the car. It's not added on later. Leniency. Yes, they have the ability to offer a dispensation from punishment for firms that inform. Is it easy to implement? No. Does it happen right away? No. Does it take time to explain clearly what it involves and to make sure that people comprehend what they have to do to qualify? The US invented the new form of leniency. They started it in 1993. It was an entrepreneurial head of the Antitrust Division at the Department of Justice who did it. She came in from private practice and she said, I've looked at your leniency program. It is very weak. The the Department of Justice original program went like this. You, the leniency applicant, tell us everything you know, and then we will decide what to do. What's that? Sounds faintly asymmetrical. I tell you everything, and then you decide how much to eliminate the punishment. Oh, by the way, never 100%. Oh no, because you broke the law. So, it's only a reduction in punishment, not elimination. Not many companies that looked at that offer thought that was attractive. Very few people ever showed up. She said, if it's going to work, it's got to be a lot more attractive. There has to be a big prize for informing. And she said, here's the program I want. You tell us everything you know, and we will completely eliminate criminal punishment. Nobody goes to prison. No criminal fine. Get out of jail free card. If you're first and you did not orchestrate the cartel. Inside the building, the professional staff said, oh no, absolutely not. There was almost hand-to-hand combat. The professional staff said, you mean let a bad guy walk away? She said, yes. She said, he'll never do it. Politically unacceptable, impossible. She said, well, the alternative is we never find out about it. How's that? Let a bad guy walk away or never find out about it. What would you prefer? And they said, still a bad idea, she said. As they say, the presenters say, for the United Kingdom broadcasting companies, thank you very much indeed for that. Thank you very much indeed for that. I'm going to do it anyway. And she did. When did the first applicant show up after it went live? It took 3 years. 3 years. Imagine sitting by the telephone. You're in the leniency office, looking at it. Please ring. No. 3 years. Why? I think nobody quite believed that the leniency promise was genuine. Everyone said, I want to be the second person to do it. You go first. I'll follow you. See how it goes. It took 3 years before anyone showed up. It has become very successful. There are lots of complications. The program they have today is much different from the program they began with because they learned so much in applying it. This is a way of saying it's not easy, it's not simple. Is it worth it? I think so. Can it generate significant returns? International experience suggests the answer is yes. Worth having? Yes. I would call it not optional equipment, I would call it standard equipment. I think for success over time, especially with cartel enforcement, must have. That's a better car. Second item I'll mention, pre-merger notification. I've already told you that I don't think it's easy. I remember how hard it was. It's difficult to do. It's a significant administrative challenge. One of the challenges that we did not anticipate is, how do you give advice about this mechanism? The FTC worked for 2 years to write the implementing regulation. It took from September 1976 to September 1978 to issue the implementing rule. It went out 2 times for public comment. It went out, comments, change it, okay. Now it's good. Nope, change it again. 2 times. It's a big fat rule. The FTC thought, finally, it's clear. Every contingency has been addressed. It's complete. We won't have to come back to it for 10 years. Finally. Within 2 weeks, it was clear that it was filled with ambiguity. Why? You don't know what the ambiguity is until you start applying it in specific cases. In my time working for the company that was called McDonnell Douglas, when I was with the law firm that did their work, I asked one of the McDonnell Douglas engineers, what does it take to build a really good airplane? And they said, well, a lot of it's your past experience. 90% of what you need to know, you know for sure. It's solving the 10% that remains that's really important. I said, yes, well, how do you know? Well, you can do some design testing on the ground. You can use a computer. You use a wind tunnel. This teaches you a lot. He said, there's only one way to know if you have a good airplane, and that is to fly the airplane. Because when you fly the airplane, you discover all kinds of things that could be made better. It was the same with the rule. We flew the plane and it had problems. So the question became, oh, what do we do? It took 2 years to get this rule. Do we have to issue an amended rule? Oh, maybe we just write them a letter. But who signs the letter? The whole board? The head of the competition unit? The head of the pre-merger unit? Who can sign the letter? Should the letter be made public? Oh no, then people will rely on the letter. That's right, they'll rely on the letter. We don't want them to do that. We want to be able to change our mind later on. So don't tell them that they'll get a letter, but they can't show it to anybody. What about giving advice over the telephone? Advice over the telephone? You mean a phone number that they call and ask, do I have to file this? Absolutely not. Who's going to monitor the guy giving advice? You mean I'm going to let Mario be on the phone telling the world what happens? We can't control him. We don't know what he'll say. 10 years later, advice over the phone. There's a guy in the pre-merger office who used to be there for many years named Jerry. Jerry was an expert. Everybody got to know Jerry. Now, what did Jerry tell them when Jerry would give advice? He'd say, as you know, I don't bind the commission. I'm giving you advice. Ultimately, you have to decide based on what's out there. If you want a letter, we'll send you a letter. But this is the phone. This is advice. In a sense, this is soft guidance. It is informal. And my view does not bind the Federal Trade Commission. Got it? People who dealt with Jerry said, understood, Jerry, understood. Why? They knew that Jerry was right 99 times out of 100. That Jerry was exactly right. That Jerry was providing a measure of guidance that was usually exactly right. And in the one case, more often than not, was right. But Jerry was telling them. So the Federal Trade Commission, over a 10-year period, became accustomed to and comfortable with going from, oh my God, we have to change the rule every time, to letters, yes, oh, on our website, you can read what we did. One of the case handlers, I remember, said, if we put the letters in the public domain, then people will know what we do. And we said, that's the point. Yes, they'll know what we do. They'll understand what we did. To advice on the phone from Jerry. Very formal, very rigid, to very informal, but very effective. Because what it told the business advisors is, do you want Jerry's pretty reliable, almost always reliable advice and guidance? And Jerry will spend time on the phone working through the problem with you, telling you what he would do. Now, as you might imagine, Jerry was really good at this. The first week, I'm sure Jerry had a lot to learn. When Jerry had been doing this for 15 years, Jerry was really good. Jerry said, yeah, that sounds a lot like this one from over here. Let me tell you what you can do. And the key at the FTC was getting a successor to Jerry. So when Jerry knew 5 years out he was going to retire, he brought in the new person and taught her everything he knows, side by side, working on different matters so that she's a star. And you call up Maureen. Maureen will help you out. And if it's not Maureen, one of her colleagues will help. Very formal, very rigid, to very informal, but really useful and effective. More confidence in how to do things. So it didn't happen overnight. There are complications in applying it. But is it better? The business people, when pre-merger notifications started in the US, said, oh no, another scourge on the capitalist system. Another impediment to getting things done. More delay, more uncertainty. What do they know now? Less delay. Do you want to know before you close that it's all right? Or do you want us chasing you around for 4, 5, or 6 years after to try and unwind your deal? So what would you like? An answer in 4 months at the beginning, or 5, 6 years of an investigation or lawsuit to chase you down later on? We'll take option A. Thank you. Clearer, much more clear, because you got clear guidance right at the front end. Yes, did you have to spend some more money at the front end? Yes. Did you have to spend money that you wish you didn't have to spend on filings, on advisors, gathering documents? Oh yes. But more clarity about what was going to happen to your deal? Absolutely, yes. More clarity. Better for the decision makers. So that now they will say, we hate that system because we have to file, but that system that we hate in many ways is better for us because it clarifies what we have to do and provides much more predictability about whether a deal is going to succeed or not. Last thing I'd want in the car. So if I'm going to the state-of-the-art competition law dealership today to buy my car or to get my Formula One racer, yes, I want that leniency thing there. I want that pre-merger notification thing. And I want my car retrofitted. That's the car I want. And last, I want the status of my agency clarified. I want clear how people are appointed. I want clear that they are an independent institution. Not unaccountable. No. But able to act on their own, to use their powers to prosecute and resolve cases. That's what's important. That's the core to protect. But not unaccountable. Absolutely not. Everything this team has been doing for transparency, consultation, ability. You want me to appear before elected officials in the Congress and explain what I do? I'll be there. To appear before different audiences and defend my program and answer questions? I'll do that. I'll be accountable. But the independence I want has to do with using the decision to prosecute so that that decision is not based on what an elected official tells me to do. That I'm going to protect. And to have additional safeguards in the law that make clear that that protection I have. Tenured appointments for the members of the board, removable only for a good reason, and a clear specification of how they're appointed and selected in the law itself. Another must-have, an extremely valuable feature in being able to do the job well. So, if I give you my assessment for the system going ahead, what do I think? The owner supporting the program. Key challenge for the owner is, how do I make the new owner like this program? How do I deliver in showing that this is a program that whatever new leadership wants, that this is a program worth having because it delivers good results for the citizens of the country. Good driver? Got it. driver that understands what to do, how to get there, how to drive. Good team. Yes, good team. Building a good team that will make things work over time and last. Yes, a better car. That will help. But notice how much is being done without getting to the new car yet. Notice how much is taking place already to improve performance, to make sure that the competition vehicle in the Formula One race finishes farther up the ladder and is seen as making progress there. But yes, over time, to consistently get in the front rank, I don't want to have to fight my way from the last row all the time. I'd rather be up in the front. Give me pole position and my life gets much better from that point. So, better car? Sure. And how do we know it's a better car? A lot of international experience has said this car, these features function better on the car. Are they easy to use? No. Do they take time to implement? Yes. Does it take time to know how to drive a new car effectively? Oh yes. But with them, is the car more effective? Sure. In many ways, a jet airplane is more complicated to fly in some ways than a propeller-driven aircraft. Yeah, it is. A better plane? Oh yes. By a long shot. More training? But is this the right path? I think so. Glad to take comments, questions, or thoughts about how to go about this. So we do have a bit of time.
Tengan pena, aprovechen de verdad la presencia del profesor Kovacic y adelante.
I have a question. You mentioned that Brazil, with the operation Lava Jato Car Wash, is doing a very good job. My understanding is that Brazil did that in alliance with the federal police.
Yes, they did.
Investigations.
They did indeed.
I think that the competition authority must have allies in other parts of the state.
Unmistakably.
I would like to know your opinion. Which are the necessary allies for the competition authority in the state?
You mentioned one of the most important. That is, if you're going to have a leniency program, you have to be able to promise to people in a reliable way that if you come in and tell me your story, I will eliminate the punishment, as I promised. That has to be a credible promise. Problem. Suppose that it is the prosecutor who also has to agree. In Chile, before the criminal statute, it's clearest with criminal enforcement, where the administrative body cannot prosecute the criminal statute. In every country I know of, the criminal statute is prosecuted by an executive branch official, like the chief prosecutor, the Ministry of Justice. So if it is a criminal sanction, you need the public prosecutor to agree with you about leniency. Because if you promise leniency and the prosecutor says, and prosecutors often say this, that's my decision. You are simply the competition agency. If you were really smart, you'd have my job. I am touched by the hand of God. I'm the prosecutor. You are simply a mortal human being. So that's my decision. Leniency doesn't work. Indeed, even short of leniency, if you have a criminal process and you want them to bring cases, you have to persuade them to bring cases. And I don't know of a country where the prosecutor immediately would say yes. You come in as a competition agency, say, I have a great case here. This is a great case. In fact, I prepared the file for you. All you have to do is take the file, read it, and take it into court. The evidence is right there. You might think it's one big happy government. We're all on the same team. So of course they'll cooperate. That's what I think of your file. When the time is right, I will get to your file. Later. Thank you. Please bring me more files. The reaction of the prosecutor in many instances at first is, get out of my way. Sometimes it's because they're thinking, what's my job? I have serious crimes involving harm to individuals. I have serious crimes involving the trafficking in human beings. I have serious crimes involving serious threats to public safety. And what's this, price fixing? Price fixing. Yeah, I'll get to that later. Tell me why it's bad. Well, it raises price, it reduces cost. Yeah. Good. I'll be in touch. So there is a process of education, cooperation, and discussion that makes them your partner rather than, in a way, your opponent. But where leniency is involved, they have to be involved. There has to be either a written understanding, or sometimes in the law itself it says you will engage in a cooperation program. But that's not necessary. But here's what happened in Chile. Before the criminal process, in Chile, the Chilean agency, Fiscalia, tells the companies it is a civil case that involves collusion, says, we will give you leniency. Good, so you're not going to prosecute me under the competition law. That's right. The terms of the settlement are announced. The leniency program is announced, and there is a public uproar. There should be more punishment. The public prosecutor says, okay, let's see, what do I have here in the law? Okay, there's a competition law. Don't want to do that. What else? Good. Here is a federal law that deals with fraud. I'll use this. The companies came in and said, wait, we have a deal with Fiscalia. Said, show me your deal. Oh, this is a deal about the competition law. Oops. I don't see anything here about fraud. And what's so beneficial is that you've already given us all the evidence. Thank you very much indeed for that. Do come back in the future. Fiscalia said, if you're going to do that, we're dead. We're dead. We cannot run these cases. We need assurance from the prosecutors that they will not find some other way to go after the companies for the behavior we have used through leniency to put aside. We need that. They got that, but it didn't happen automatically because the prosecutor's attitude is, that's my job. I decide what laws will be enforced. I'll decide if someone gets to take a walk or gets punished. I'm the professional. What was your name again? Fiscalia? Right, good. Where are you? Nice competition agency. Yeah, get out of here. Let me do my job. That's a relationship that takes time to build. And it's one of the most important, is with the public prosecutor. That's one. Others, the sectoral regulators, who sometimes have concurrent authority, sometimes separate parallel authority, sometimes they are the decision makers. It is the same process of cooperation where you say to other regulators, this is why competition is valuable, this is why it can improve performance, and it is also a process of education and discussion. Let me give you a third group. So I have the prosecutor, I have sectoral regulators. Third, public procurement officials. They are the early warning system for bid rigging fraud. They can be. When you show up and say, I have an idea for you, do they say, at last, thank goodness you're here. I've been waiting for you. It is more likely that at first they will try to slam the door on your fingers as you try to get in. And they will say, oh, what you want to do is take more time. I'm getting pressure from all of my leadership in the agency to get these contracts done, to finish the tenders, to move to the next tender. And you want to slow me down. Or worse, you want to look at the old tenders to see if there was something wrong. So what you really want to do is to find a way to put a noose around my neck. I'm not going to help you get lost. So the procurement officials do not immediately say, welcome. It is a long process of education to do several things. One is, here are things that you will see in tendering that suggest collusion, bid rigging, allocation. If you see these things, tell us. We can do something about that. If you notice that there are monthly procurements for these projects to improve roads, and that there are only 4 companies that bid, and every month there is a sequence. A wins the first month, B wins the second, C the third month, D the 4th month, and then we repeat. If you see this, that's very suspicious. This is not just cosmic fate. Something else is going on. Tell us, please. Another thing we want them to do is say, we've looked at the way in which you go about buying things, and you are the cartel's best friend. You are doing things in a way that reinforce cartel discipline. Do you have to do it this way? Do you have any discretion to vary the approach you use? We have some ideas about that. But we want to be your partners. No, we don't want to slow you down. We don't want to second guess you. We want to put money in your pockets. We want to take the 25 to 30% you lose every year because of bid rigging, and that's more money for you to spend. We want to make you a hero of Argentina. Because instead of building 3 new school buildings a year, you'll build 4. Instead of paving 3,000 kilometers of new road, you'll pave 4,000. And instead of opening that new terminal out at the airport in 3 years, you'll do it in 2. And we'll do that for you. We are your friend, and this is how. That relationship can be very productive, but in all of these relationships across agencies, sometimes God smiles on you and you're lucky. And it's love at first sight. That's unusual. Around the world, that's a relationship in each instance that has to be built and developed over time. That requires cooperation at the top, in the middle, and at the case handling level, if it's going to be done well. An investment worth making, but not cheap or instantaneous. Requires a lot of patience. The first day the door gets slammed on your fingers, and your fingers still hurt, you think, I'm never going back there again. To hell with them. I'm not going to help them save money. Wait, it's my money. I should help them. I ought to do that. It's very hard to get hit in the face and come back. And they will hit you in the face, probably, at first.
So, another condition.
Please, Eduardo.
Yes, another condition might be the road. No? Not only the driver, but the car, but also the road.
Mm-hmm.
In the sense of a minimum of quality of some related institution working properly, no? Because otherwise you cannot go too far.
you've shown that my
For
metaphor
example,
is...
the quality of judges, for example, the quality of agencies, for example, and also the example that our case handler, Jay, excellent case handler, by the way.
You have complicated but improved my metaphor dramatically. You see, yesterday when I talked to Julian, my simple model was we were talking about what does it take? Is it the agency leadership? Is it design of the agency? And I told Julian, it's both. It's car and driver. He said, oh no. It's one more factor, owner. Owner, the political environment, the political leadership. And you have just given me the road too. And it's so true. What happens if the courts, what's the worst that can happen with the courts? In some countries, the courts are hopelessly corrupt. And the results that are obtained are the results of paying for outcomes. And you get the outcomes if you bid the most to get the outcome that you desire. And often those courts are often afflicted with terrible shortage of resources, which creates bad delays. I'll give the example of Egypt. In the late 1990s, several international donors funded a study of the Egyptian courts. They looked at the commercial courts, not the criminal courts. They looked at the commercial courts. The courts responsible for the enforcement of contract claims. So where you would go if you owned a bakery and you contracted to purchase ovens to open your bakery and you had a deadline and they missed the deadline and they showed up 2 months late and you said, that cost me lots of sales. Breach of contract, I want damages for the lost profits. That's where you would go. The study said that if you play by the rules, meaning no bribes, no expediting, no bribes, play by the rules, wait in the queue until it's your turn, the date on which you would get an answer through the litigated process, this is court of first instance, this is an appeals, start to finish, documented 20 years. 0 years, 20 years. Now, you could accelerate if you're willing to pay. If you're willing to pay the judge and the clerk of the court, they move you up on the queue. If you were to make another payment, you would get a better date for your trial. And if you wanted to assure yourself of a specific result, the real fast track to happiness, that's a further payment. What do you do when your system is completely shot through with corruption and delay like that? In trying to reform their regulatory process, including competition law, Egypt said, we're going to create an entirely new set of courts. We are not going to try to build something onto that diseased framework. It's infected. We will create something new, a new commercial court channel. New judges, new facilities, new procedures, completely apart. That seemed to be working. Arab Spring, revolution, turmoil, upheaval, it's throwing many things into doubt. That was working. A number of countries have done exactly that. Suppose it's not hopeless corruption. Suppose it's just judges who see the competition law and they say, I didn't go to law school to become a judge to do this. It's economics. That is the science of Satan. I don't understand that. This individual came into my courthouse and drew a graph, a pornographic symbol, an x-axis and a y-axis, and put that in front of adult society. Children saw that. This is a horrible offense. I never want to see that again in my courtroom. Most judges, as you know, have been running away from mathematics since they were in high school. That's why they didn't go to medical school or become scientists. They've been running very fast, so I don't want equations. I don't want even the simplest function. No, 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 no. What do you do there? One thing as a start is you create a special chamber that handles more of these matters. Repeated exposure, more experience, more familiarity, better. Another is that you try to change the judges who are chosen for these jobs, screening for background and expertise, or you provide some form of additional education after they have been selected, and you give them education. I used to say you provide training for judges. I said this word in front of a group of judges. Hand goes up right away. It says, "You do not train us. We are not dogs. You do not train us. We are not trained. We are judges. We are professionals. We are at the high level." I said, "Permiso. Disculpe. Very, very sorry for this. How about if we have a workshop?" That's better. So you do not have judicial training programs. You have a workshop where we all talk as colleagues. And who leads the workshop? Another judge. You get a judge because God will talk to God. That's okay. God does not talk to mortal human beings. So you have a workshop where you have another God there who will help guide the workshop. And then they say, "That's okay. That's all right. It's a workshop. Nobody's teaching me because I know everything. This is just another view of the way life is. And it's another perspective. We're sharing perspectives. Nobody's teaching me. It's a workshop." So you have workshops. I think workshops are useful. They're valuable. And they're set up this way. "Oh, Your Honor, would you attend a workshop?" So we discuss these ideas. Yeah. It has worked very well in Mexico. One way to do it is that the people who organize the workshops is the government office responsible for the administration and management of the courts in the country. They will be the host for the workshop, and they probably do lots of workshops in other areas. But they could be the host for the workshop. But you have a workshop, and you offer judges a chance to talk, especially with other judges. One judge who has done this very well in the U.S. is Douglas Ginsburg. He's the U.S. Court of Appeals judge. He has done this. He's great. He knows who he's talking to. He's worn the dark robes. He sat there on the bench, and he looks at them and say, "Welcome, fellow gods. Let's talk about competition law." And they accept that. But I think that is a valuable way. But you're right. If you don't work on the roads, the car won't drive so well. A car that is designed to go up to 300 kilometers an hour. There are places, by the way, where you can do this. Some racetracks will allow you to be in a car, usually a Formula One racer, but a stock car, sitting next to another driver, and they'll allow you to drive. It's pretty scary when it goes 100 miles an hour. 120 is really scary even if you're just going in a circle. 200 is petrifying. But all those tracks, they're really clean, very smooth, and they work very hard to make sure that the road itself works well. So, the road, not just the owner, the driver, the team, and the car. The road, yes. I think we have one more. Okay. I've taken so much of your evening already. Please.
Regarding merger control, To what extent do you think that would be good for the competent authorities in the region to start discussing about pre-notification in a way to complement and be more efficient going forward?
That is, before the law is adopted, or to have conversations before filing takes place? Are you thinking?
Before the new law takes place. In a way to get ready for what will.
I think it's very valuable. I think a period in which, and I believe this is in the draft law, the law takes effect after a 1-year pause. I think that 1-year period is an excellent time for that conversation to happen. It's a time when the implementation can be refined. It's a time when the competition agency says, this is what we intend to do. This is what the form looks like. This is what notification will involve. This is the information we expect you to provide. And if you want clarification and guidance, this is how you get the guidance. I think that kind of discussion is valuable before the law takes effect and after it takes effect. Because you want an open communication where those who are affected by the law will come and tell you how it's working. Because there will be things that, even with great foresight, you will not anticipate. I'll give you an example. We would have, after the fact, discussions with companies when I was at the FTC. You'd have a merger review, you would wait until some of the bruises had healed, and people had become less emotional about the process. And you would say, come and tell us about what it was like. We found that usually they would come and talk. And they'd say, this is what it was like. And we asked them, we'd like to know how much it cost you to comply, what information you had to gather, and what gathering the information cost. Were there types of records that we asked for that you are fairly confident were meaningless, but you had to get them anyway? Those discussions were extremely useful. And it caused inside the House to do some rethinking about what we were asking for. Because if you ask for if you ask for information that is useless, it is bad for the companies and it is bad for you. Because you're wasting your time looking at things that tell you nothing. And we were able to identify some significant categories of information that were expensive to collect and useless to the agency. And it was because of these conversations where the parties would come in and say, you made us search for this. It was really expensive. We can't imagine why you wanted it. Please rethink. We'd say, thank you. Thanks for coming. Are they gone? Why did we ask for that? Why do we keep asking for it? Has it ever been useful? Or, more to the point, how often is it useful? And that was very, very useful to know. And that only happens if you continue that conversation over time. That's a key part of evaluation. And by the way, what we found as a competition agency is we got lots of credit from our bar for making those kinds of improvements. From going to the bar and the business community and saying, we have found a way to reduce the burden without reducing the quality of the review we do. So in the future, here are things that we are not going to ask for, and we are going to create a faster process for you to come and tell us what we have asked for and you think is not useful, and to challenge it. To our bar and to the businesses, especially the businesses, that gave us tremendous goodwill. Because they thought, they're trying. They realize this is expensive, they realize it takes time, they understand the world in which we live. One other thing we found out that was very useful was we learned more about the deadlines that companies face to do certain reporting and prepare certain documents at the end of the fiscal year. There are documents at the end of the fiscal year they have to file. There are reports that have to be done periodically. And one thing they explained was, if we can finish this transaction by December 31st, in the next year, we will only have to file one report, not two. One report. It covers everything. Not two because the company kept going into the new year. No, but we can finish it at this time. That's very useful. And if you can please expedite your process, let us just tell you the deadline we're facing. We understand that your review is not governed by our deadlines. But if there is a way for you, if you think this deal is not going to be a problem, if you can let us know by this date, our life just got much better. There were times when we realized that we could not satisfy that request, and we said, sorry, we can't. But there were times that we realized, oh, Mario, is there any reason we can't do that? What would it take for us to do that? Well, we'd have to spend a little more time looking at this right now. Sometimes it meant that the board would have to read something over the weekend. A memo to clear, said, let's do that. Let's read the memo. Let's give them an answer on Monday. And two things happened. One is, the client on the other end thought, good, good. They finished it a little bit earlier than they had to. I like that kind of government. Didn't cost them anything, a little more effort, but they finished it on time. Good. That's not a lazy government that doesn't listen. That's government that performs at a high level. And the lawyer for the law firm who got to make that law firm, make that call, he was our friend forever. Because he realized, I'm going to get to call them and tell them it's okay. We'll be done by the end of the reporting year, and we will only have to do one report next year. That person thought, these guys aren't so stupid after all. These guys are really good. In fact, they're really very good at what they do. So, in a way, that was a bit strategic on our part to do that. But it's something that we learned by talking to them, which is, if you can hit these kinds of targets, it's very helpful. And by the way, please don't make a major demand on us on the day before the summer holiday begins and everyone's going on vacation for 3 weeks. If you can avoid doing that, you help a lot of human beings on our side who will be much better off, because they will not have to be making a call to their families saying, we are not going to the beach for 3 weeks. You're going to the beach, I'm staying here to work on this. Things like that. Gracias.
Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias.